So, hi, I'm Mary Jo. I am so grateful to see all of you guys here. And really, the staff that is on the premise every day, those are the ones that are the front lines. And then you alumni, the way you extend yourselves out to other people to be there, to show hope, is just phenomenal. We'll have some time after the speakers for you guys to share some of your just experiences or how you're doing. But for right now, I can't tell you how excited I am to introduce Kristina and Constance. They wrote the book, The Lost Years, together, mother and daughter. And I'm not going to say any more because I'm going to let them take it from here. And please, please enjoy.
Thank you. Usually we don't even say anything. We launch into our reading, but it's been really lovely to see so many people. I feel very emotional, actually, and happy that you're all here and enjoying recovery. And so hopefully we're going to help you in some way or make a difference in somehow. Thank you.
So, can you hear me? Oh, okay. Is that better? Oh, there we go. Okay. Like my mom said, we normally just start with our reading, and then we talk a little bit about our experience, and then we certainly open it up for Q&A at the end. But just wanted to say also how beautiful this is and how exciting it is to be here. I was laughing. You know, I've worked in the addictions industry for a long time, about 28 years now or so. And I've been to, I don't know, about 500 centers across the country personally. So, you know, I've traveled extensively. I've had the pleasure of being on site to a lot of properties. And I just want to say this is just really spectacular. And I was laughing, and I'm so excited to go to the Ridge after this, but I was laughing when you said, when it was asked that the whole staff stand up, and Ben, you were the first, like, shot up, and I was thinking, that's the marketer, like, you're such a good marketer. They're always the first, right? The marketing teams are always the first to jump, so well done. You earned your money today. So thank you. We will start with our reading, and then we'll share, and happy to open it up for questions at the end of that. So. The throbbing in my head is so loud I can barely hear the voices outside the door. I cannot remember where I am. The room is small. The walls are yellow or white. I can't tell which. There is a toilet and a sink. The tile floor is hard when my knees slam onto it, and the pressure behind my eyes is almost unbearable. My vision is blurry, and I can taste bile in the back of my throat. My stomach starts to turn and heave as breath escapes my mouth. It is like there are holes in my lungs, and as hard as I try, I cannot hold air in them. I can feel blood dripping from my nose. My body is turning inside out, and I feel so confused I can hardly think. The room begins to spin, and I'm slipping away. Is this what death feels like? I always thought it would come quietly. I always thought I was not afraid to die. I'd been waiting, expecting, and inviting it for years. I used to dream about what it would feel like to close my eyes and never have to open them again. I longed for the peace I was sure that death would bring, and I wanted to end my constant pain. And now in this strange, unfamiliar bathroom, I can taste death. Suddenly I am afraid. Panic comes over me and my heart is beating fast. Then it gets quiet, very quiet. My head stops pounding, my heart slows, and there's a moment of clarity. I'm going to die by myself, and no one's going to notice that I'm gone. I could disappear from the face of this earth, and no one would ever know. In that place between here and the afterlife, when the anger falls away, I realize how alone I am and how much of life I have missed. I am only 21 years old, and I planned on being so much more. I wanted to graduate high school, go to college on a swimming scholarship. I wanted to study psychology, write a book, find a life, and be happy. I wanted to make my parents proud. I wanted to be someone and make a real difference in the world. I wanted to have an extraordinary life. There are so many things that I want to say to my family now, but it's too late. A grip tightens around my neck and my breath becomes very shallow. My head hits the floor, and with a deep ache in my heart and a terrible regret in my soul, I close my eyes to die. My mom will be so sad that it ended this way.
It has been a good day. Whoops. I'm feeling hopeful, happy, and strong once again. It's been 3 years since Kristina left home, choosing drugs instead of help, and finally we are recovering from that terrible loss. My 2 younger daughters are smiling and laughing again. My son has graduated from college and gone on to be very successful in his life, and I'm healing from a painful divorce. We are moving on. We miss Kristina terribly, but our lives are so much more peaceful without her. I never thought I would say such a thing about my own daughter, but her addiction had been totally disruptive for all of us, and life is better with her out of the house. We have just finished dinner, and I'm washing the dishes when I'm overcome with a feeling of darkness that I've never known before. A mother can sense her children living and dying. I know Kristina's heart is slowing, and I'm seized by a tightness in my chest. I loved her deeply, and my heart aches for her. She does not deserve to die. I pray for her to go peacefully. It will all be over soon. She will be able to rest. I will be able to rest. God, please keep her safe. So how did we get there? And what's our journey that brought us here today? So I was born the oldest of 7 children in a sweet Catholic family. We had lots of noise and commotion, laughter and tears, all those things you would find with 9 people living under one roof. But we had a happy family. My parents loved each other, and we felt safe and secure in our home. So from there, I went off to high school, where I was on the student council and a dance committee and a cheerleader. So I was very active in my high school community. So then I went off to college. I followed in the same vein. I was on the dance committee, if we had one. I was an officer in my sorority all 4 years, on the student council, and a varsity cheerleader the year that Texas Tech went to the Gator Bowl with Donnie Anderson. So that was very fun, and that was very glamorous, and that was very exciting, and I wanted to keep that going. So, of course, you know what I did? I married an alcoholic. I didn't know that's what he was. It didn't seem like he drank any more than anybody else did. I mean, after all, we went to fraternity parties, we went to beer bus, we drank. I drank too much sometimes myself. But life was fun and exciting. And so I thought we would be fine. I could help him if he needed help, for sure. But I didn't know about alcoholism at that time. To me, an alcoholic was some dirty old man face down in a gutter somewhere. I had no idea it'd be a handsome, charming, cigar-smoking college boy or a businessman in a 3-piece suit. That didn't compute. So we had these high expectations for ourselves. We were going to be a happy family. We were going to have children, and we were going to have a successful business. So in the beginning, that's how it worked. We lived in the right house, in the right neighborhood. We drove the right cars, took our children to the right church. We went to soccer games, and we went to swim meets. We took our children to church every Sunday, lined them up in a pew, right? We looked like the all-American family, like some of you. That was on the outside. On the inside, there was this growing, permeating disease that was just creeping through our house. It affected each member of our family in different ways. There was manipulation, there was control, there was anger, and then there was this seething rage. It came up unexpectedly. We never knew what would bring this rage at us. Maybe it was because the dinner wasn't ready, or maybe it was because the garbage wasn't out. Simple things in life could trigger this rage. And it was so big and so loud and so scary. I didn't know what to do with that rage. Why didn't I say, hey, buddy, you can't talk to me that way or you're out of here? That never entered my mind. It was that I was going to make it right for everyone. I was there for the duration. I never even considered leaving or sending him away. So, one day at a time, one incident at a time, I gave my power away. I just became a shell of that vibrant, enthusiastic young woman I started out to be. And along came our 13-year-old daughter, and she proclaimed to the world that we were not as we appeared.
So when I was 13, I had my first drink. I stole liquor from my parents' liquor cabinet and drank myself to sleep at the bushes at the end of their driveway. I was very curious about alcohol because alcohol was very important to my father. So I was just very curious about it. I didn't drink because I was at a party or peer pressure or anything like that, solely by myself in the bushes at the end of the driveway. And from the first time I drank, I loved what alcohol did for me. I loved what alcohol did for me. I'm a really shy and uncomfortable person in general. So when I drank, I felt better, like a camera clicking into focus. Well, old school camera, that's what it was like. That clicking sound until my whole life was in focus with alcohol in my body. And I loved what it did for me. I felt confident. Had anyone been in the bushes with me? And better. I just felt better. Alcohol, all substances were all about delivery for me, delivering me someplace else, making me feel something else. So from the first time I drank, I loved what alcohol did for me. I was only 13 and I lived in this family, so I had this little 13-year-old life and I still went on with that. I went to school and I had a swimming career. I did go to high school eventually for about 3 days. No, I'm kidding. It was a little longer, maybe half a year. But when I got to high school, I found drugs and more alcohol very quickly. And boys, I went to a private girls' school for my younger years. So when I went to this co-ed high school, I found boys, I found drugs, I found alcohol, and very quickly I found myself addicted. I met this boy, and he surfed, and he didn't wear shoes, and he drove a VW bus, and my parents hated him, which made him even hotter. Like, he was hot and a wreck and just everything wrong. He was everything wrong, just the right amount of wrong. So he introduced me. We were going to this dance, and he pulled out this cocaine, and I'll never forget feeling so overwhelmed and so scared and so out of my league, and I was frozen. I wanted to say no, I didn't want to do this, I just wanted to go home, but I just wanted him to like me. I wanted him to like me more than I wanted to do right. So I did the cocaine, and that one decision changed and altered the course of my life, and in a matter of a year, I was really crazily addicted. My parents tried everything to help me, manage me, control me, contain me. My mom found Al-Anon, which I can say here, we don't say in the general public, but my mom found Al-Anon, which ruined my life. It ruined my life. She got a sponsor and a spine, and my life was over as I knew it. So, including putting me in 3 different treatment centers by the time I was 18. And I ran from every center. No matter what she did to try and manage me, I just kept rolling through. And I don't know when it was that substances became the most important thing in my life, but somewhere along the way they did, and nothing else mattered. Nothing else mattered to me. And she tried everything, including, by the way, nailing my window shut, which I'm certain is not in the Al-Anon Big Book.
That's her dad that did that, not me.
I think that's illegal, actually, nailing your kid in their room. But right before my 18th birthday, they tried one more time and drove me to Idaho from San Francisco to an adolescent center. It was a very long drive, by the way, locked in the back, to an adolescent wilderness program. It's very interesting when you hear my mother's view of the treatment center and my view of the treatment center, they're very different. Had a lot of snow, a lot of girls, hated them both. So they left me there in the middle of Idaho, and 4 days later I found my way out, and I did make my way back to California. I came to my mother's door, and she answered the door. I used to say, like, she kind of had this, like, Al-Anon float, you know? She would just kind of float around in this little Al-Anon bubble, you know, like nothing you can do is going to affect my life. You shithead child. So she came to the door in her Al-Anon floaty way and just said that I was no longer, she answered the door and said that I was no longer welcome in her home or in her life until I was living a life of recovery. And if she never saw me alive again, she wanted me to know how much she loved me. And she closed the door.
So how could a mother do that anyway? That sounds disgusting, not like a real loving mother, right? Well, it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't easy. This was such a bewildering time. I mean, I'm doing everything right. I'm driving the carpools. I cook dinner at night, 5, 6, 7 nights a week. Go to the soccer games, go to the swim meets, Girl Scout cookie mom. I mean, what else is there to do? But my child is changing right before my eyes. Her looks are changing. Her attitude is changing. Her friends are changing. I mean, these kids that came to the door were pretty scary. Everything was such a problem. I take her to school in the morning. We get a call from the office that our child has missed 1 or more classes today. Now, this is a kid that always had her homework done on time, cared about her grades. She really focused on school and on her swim team. And all of a sudden, this is falling by the wayside. I don't know what else to do. She's stealing from her little sister's piggy bank. When we set a boundary, she crossed that boundary. And then we had a consequence. That consequence never mattered to her. And sometimes we'd say, well, maybe we won't set a boundary. Maybe we'll just let her do what she's going to do and see how that works. It was experimental. But I have a son that's 2 years older than she. So how do I say, son, you have to be in at midnight, but I'll just be grateful if Kristina comes in at all? That's not very productive in a family situation. So we just don't know what else to do. And you know, there's so much shame. I felt such shame because I couldn't control my child. She was out in the middle of the night sometimes, roaming the neighborhood. And I knew that my neighbors and my friends were thinking, what in the world are they doing over there? Why don't they control that child? That's what I was asking myself too. It was impossible. It was. So I started calling treatment centers to say, this is what's happening in our home. What do you think? And of course, they all said, oh, yes, you have an alcohol and drug problem for sure. My friends, they're calling and looking for colleges for their kids, and I'm looking for drug rehabs for mine. It was just nothing I expected in my life ever before. So we put her in that first treatment center. It was connected to our community hospital, but it was an adolescent center. And they told me, they said, well, you know, you should go to Al-Anon. We recommend Al-Anon. So, well, maybe I've heard of Al-Anon, but I've done everything I can. By golly, I brought her here for you to fix her, right? You fix her, and then we'll be okay. So they kept encouraging me, go to Al-Anon. So finally I said, oh, okay, I'm going to try one more thing if it's going to help my daughter. So I go to the Friday morning meeting in our community, very well attended, very popular meeting, and I sneak in the back, and I try to be invisible, right? Don't want to see anybody I know, don't want them to see me, I don't know, but I sit in that chair, and the tears start coming down my face. I have no idea where they're coming from, I don't feel it in my gut, but I can't make them stop. And these people around me, they keep giving me tissues and patting me on the shoulder. Don't worry, keep coming back. It's going to get better. Keep coming back. I'm like, what are they talking about? I mean, I left there that particular morning. I said, well, I'm so glad they have someplace to go. But I ended up being one of those people. And I went 3 and 4 times a week to Al-Anon. And then I befriended a group of women that were recommended also by this first treatment center. We called ourselves the MODAs. That's Mothers of Drug Addicts. And we met on Thursdays for lunch. We had crosstalk if we needed. We shared our experience of the week. And some of these women I actually knew in the outside world. I had no idea that they were having such problems with their children, but it was so beneficial. Oh. So between Al-Anon and the MODAs, I started finding my voice again. I started standing for myself. And I convinced my husband, who was never crazy about paying for these treatment centers, especially since they weren't appearing to work. So I finally convinced him she's going to be 18 very soon. So we need to get her in one more time. So I found the perfect place. It's in Idaho. It's in the woods. It's a woman's facility. She knows nobody. She doesn't even know where she is. We don't really know where she is either. So she'll stay. There's no way. Where can she go? Who can come and save her? So we drop her off. Oh, and then we come around the bend, and I look down, and here come these women out of the community center, and a few of the girls milling around. I said, this is perfect. This is a perfect place. She's going to get better, and my family's going to be better. So we left her there. We drove those other 18 hours back home, and we felt such relief until the middle of the night we get this call. We're so sorry to tell you that your daughter has run away. We just had the worst snowstorm in 50 years. She'll be back. They always come back. No. I said, no, you don't know my daughter. She is not coming back. She is one stubborn girl. So you know how it is. I'm sure some of you have had these middle of the night calls. And, you know, there's no more sleeping. There's stress. I paced the floor. I was fearful. I was angry. I was fearful. I was angry. I didn't know which emotion to feel. So the next morning, I went to my church. And I just got down on my knees and I said, God, you take her. I can't. You take her. I can't. do this anymore. Please, God, take her. And you know, somewhere inside, it landed. It landed. I said, I know. I have no power here. I have no power over my child's choices. It's her job now, not mine. So when she came to the door, I didn't feel like I was turning her away. For me, it was, Kristina, this is your life. You go, you do what you need with your life. I can't do this anymore. I have 3 other children to consider, a husband. I can't get better with this drama that you constantly bring to our home. So you make your way, and treatment is always available. Now, I turn around and I look at my husband who's sitting at the table expecting to have this conversation with his daughter, and his mouth is hanging open. How did that happen? I don't know where it came from. I just knew we couldn't do it anymore. It wasn't fair to anybody else in the house, really. And besides that, in my heart, I was always hoping that, she'd come to her senses in 2 or 3 weeks. That turned into 2 or 3 months. It turned into 2 or 3 years. But it took a while for her to come around. So in the meantime, I had to continue with my recovery, and I had to pray a lot and just get better for myself so that when she was ready, I'd be there for her.
So I wish I could say that I got sober the day my mom closed the door on me. It would have saved me a lot of heartache for sure, and many lost and unhappy years. But I didn't. I descended into the depths of addiction. I thought, I remember walking away from the door that day, and I thought to myself, my mom is having a high self-esteem Al-Anon day, and she's going to get over it. She's going to get over it in like 4 days. That's the cycle. 4 days, I'll be back. Well, it's been many decades, and my mom has not gotten over it. So I set out into the world to prove to her and her Al-Anon sponsor, that I did not need treatment and that I was going to be okay. And I did for a little while. I set out in the world. I had a little life. I had little jobs. I only went to work on Wednesdays, however. And so I got fired a lot. I could not show up anywhere on time to save my life. So Wednesdays were like the only day of the week I seemed coherent enough to go anywhere. That's why I only went to work on Wednesdays. And I only went to work to steal. So obviously I got fired all the time. The last time I got fired, I walked home to this tiny little room that I rented, and I thought to myself all night long, I need to come up with some sort of job where I can be self-employed. I can work at night, ideally. That seems to be kind of my prime time, in the nighttime. Loaded would be good. If I could have a job that I could do loaded, that would be a bonus, and I kind of went over in my head what kind of career I could come up with for myself. And I came up with 2. I could prostitute or I could rob homes. After much consideration, I decided that prostitution seemed like a lot of work and, included other people, which were not my strong suit. Remember, I'm a very shy person, so like social interactions, just not real strong at the social part. So, sweating. Ugh. So I decided that I would rob homes instead. So I engaged in 22 home invasions to support my habit. And after my 22nd home that I robbed, I decided that it was really high stress employment, actually, and a great way to get shot in the face, which I didn't want. I just needed to be high. So I retired from that career and I moved into the city of San Francisco, onto the streets, where I lived out the rest of my days homeless in San Francisco. And addiction is such It's such a despairing disease. I woke up every single day for 3 years. I woke up every single day for those 3 years and said to myself, today's the day I'm going to turn it around. Today's the day I'm going to be different. Today's the day I'm going to call my mom. I'm going to ask for help. I'm going to pull myself out of this. Today's the day. I'm not going to get loaded. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to be better. I'm going to do better. I'm going to be better. And every single day for 3 years, I was under the influence of one thing or another. It is an incredibly despairing disease. When I would wake up in the morning and say to myself, I'm going to do this. And at the end of the day, I had done nothing except what I had done the day before. And it was just constant hours of misery, day after day. Trying to survive, trying to stay warm, trying to stay fed. Homelessness is an incredibly painful, particular type of torture. It is relentlessly cold. I don't think I was warm for damn near 3 years, and it took me a decade of sobriety for my bones to ease. I learned very quickly how to try and stay warm. I'd lay on top of cars before car alarms were a thing. Car alarms were a thing. I learned how to feed myself. You know, in San Francisco, it's very different today. But in San Francisco, and actually all hotels, I think about it a lot when I travel. People put all their, again, things have changed since of COVID, but before COVID, they'd put all their food outside their door, room service, uneaten room service. You can eat really well walking the floors of hotels in San Francisco, and people put out alcohol outside their room. That's how I would feed myself outside of getting food, begging for food or however. I remember sitting on a street corner in San Francisco and I would beg for money or, with my little jar, and I would watch cars drive into the city in the morning, and I'd watch those same cars drive out at night, and I'd watch those same cars do that same thing every day after, 5 days in a row. And I would sit on that street corner so confused as to how they made life look so easy. Like, how is it that they go to work 5 days in a row? Makes me emotional. I felt like I was missing some really big piece of information that everyone else on the planet had. And they made life look so easy and simple. You just get in your car and you go to work, and then you get in your car and you go home and you do it again. It was an incredibly despairing time. There is not anything I haven't done to support my habit. There isn't anything I haven't done out there. I committed crime. I hurt people. I hurt the people that I love most. If you dared to stand too close to me, it was only a matter of time before I would annihilate you. Not on purpose, never on purpose. That's the most despairing thing about my addiction, is I'm not a bad person. I never meant to cause any harm, and I don't know when it was that somebody that meant no harm caused the most harm. I caused the most harm to the people that love me most. And I never meant for any of it to happen. So the end for me came in 1993. I found my last drink in a dumpster. It was a bottle of chocolate liqueur, and I woke up on that day. It was a day like every other day. Woke up, more like came to. On that day, like any other day. It wasn't like any other day. I just knew that was the day I was done. I was going to be done. I was done. So I found my last drink, and I had every intention of walking myself into oncoming traffic in San Francisco. I drank that bottle dry, and I was stumbling towards the street corner with every intention of ending it. I was arrested for being drunk and disorderly, which is, I know, it's funny because I robbed 22 homes. But they arrested me, and back then, no longer anymore. Back then, they took you to homeless shelters instead of, legal institution. So they took me to a homeless shelter, and there on the floor of that homeless shelter, I had my moment of clarity, which is what I read to you. And on the floor of that homeless shelter, I knew I was dying. I knew I was dying. I knew I was dying. And I was not afraid of that. What I didn't expect was the incredible regret that I felt that I had done this to myself. Like I said, I was only 21 years old, and I planned on being somebody. I was going to have a good life. I was going to make a difference in the world. I never meant for this to happen. And the last thought I remember having was how sad my mom will be that it ended this way. And I closed my eyes to die. You're all very bright people, right? Saving you the suspense. You know, I didn't die. I did come out of that homeless shelter, but I came out of that homeless shelter different. I don't know, it makes me emotional. I don't know what happened to me on the floor. But I came out of that shelter just knowing two things. What I knew is that if I didn't drink, I was going to die. And if I drank, I was going to die. And I had never felt that before. I know today they call that, where I go, a jumping off place. But I just could no longer live with it. And I could no longer live without it. So not knowing what else to do, I called my mom. And she said, "Are you calling for help?" And I said, "I am."
So, of course, I was relieved to hear that. I said, "Great, Kristina, I'm so happy. I'll call the treatment center. I'll let them know that we're going to pay for you to be there. But we're going on vacation." So we had planned this vacation, the rest of my family, and we no longer revolved our whole lives around Kristina and her addiction. So I knew that, well, we didn't know if she'd be there still, you know. She had this pattern of going and then leaving. So certainly we wouldn't change our vacation because of that either. So I said, okay, we'll do it. We went on our trip. We came back. She was still there. Thank the Lord. She was still there. And so we participated in the family group, my other children and myself. And that was really a nice beginning. I mean, I was already in recovery, but, you know, I had taken my youngest one to Alateen some. But I think that this new way of hearing about alcoholism and the counseling that we got from our treatment center helped us all along.
So I did go to treatment. I went to a 30-day program, and I stayed half a year. And treatment was really important for me because it saved my life, I'm sure. I believe in treatment. It got me off the streets. It fed me, healed me in some ways. But the most important thing that treatment did for me was introduce me to the program of recovery that I found in Alcoholics Anonymous. We don't generally talk about, you know, Anonymous at the level of press, radio, and films, but due to the population that's here today, I think it's fair or comfortable to say that that's where I found my recovery, was in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I stayed in that treatment program for half a year. I just want to point out that when I called my mom from the street corner that day, she did not come and get me. That was profound for me. I believed on some level, as much as I could believe anything outside of myself, that my mom was sitting around the phone waiting for me to call for 3 years. So when she said, "You're welcome to go to the center, we'll pay for it, good luck, you know, we're out. We got a family vacation plan, we're going." It was stunning to me. But I want to say that it was the greatest gift that my mom gave me on that street corner. It was only when I realized that no one was coming. No one was coming to save me. That I could reach outside myself for help, and that was the birthplace of my self-esteem. And my mom loved me enough to get out of the way to let that happen. And since that day, almost 30 years ago, I've been clean and sober. So I did go to treatment. It was an incredible place, important. Best thing they did was introduce me to this life of recovery. And I left that treatment center. And back then, all those years ago, they didn't have like sober living homes. They didn't have outpatients, IOPs, or at least I didn't have access to any of that. So I lived in a van, a jankety ass, like child kidnapping type van. Like, I can't believe, the only reason I say that is because since the pandemic, like hashtag van life, like I don't know about y'all, but in California, people spend a lot of money, like $250,000 and shit on vans. Like that wasn't my van. My van, I'm sure it was donated to me in treatment by the meth guy that had no teeth, that I'm sure like made meth in it or something, but he donated it to me and towed it out by, the water, and that's where I lived. So it didn't have an engine, it didn't run, there was no like hashtag anything, but I lived in that van and I began to put my life back together. I want to say also that coming out of homelessness is probably the greatest achievement of my life, and I've had many since, but the single greatest achievement of my life has to be that. It is really, really hard to get unhomeless. It's really hard to get unhomeless. And there are a lot of hours in the day, so many more than 24, right? Like the days are long, but the nights are 1,000 hours each when you live in a van and you don't want to drink. And you don't want to drink. My early sobriety was not easy. I wanted to get loaded every single day. I had a hard time staying sober in a life that was miserable. Probably not selling it very well, but there is a point. What I knew for certain was that I did not want to die addicted. I saw what happened. I've seen people die on the street. I see what it is. I see how cold and empty and lonely it is. I've watched nameless, faceless people die on the street. I didn't want that. I wasn't sure about sobriety. I could not fathom my life without substances, I was 21 years old. I knew that smoking crack probably wasn't going to lead to a good long life, but never drinking again, that just seemed a little aggressive. I remember telling the treatment center that. I was like, easy on this abstinence thing. Like, you got to back up a little bit. Slow your roll. Alcohol's all right. Little cannabis. It's going to be all right, people. Anyway. I could not fathom my life without substances, and then here I am living in this van, trying really hard, not to get loaded. And it's a hard thing being homeless. And back then, before cell phones and internet, which my daughter says I should not say because I sound old, but I got sober before the internet or cell phones, y'all. So what that means is when I went to go fill out a job application, I didn't have an address. I didn't have a phone number. I didn't have a high school education. I didn't have an ID. I didn't have a bank account. I had nothing. And I would fill out these job applications. I had to go in person because they didn't have internet. There was no online application. Out of my van, walk my way there, beg for a job, get turned down. I heard no more at that time than I heard any other time in my life. No, you can't eat here. No, you can't shower here. No, you can't leave your jankety ass van here. No, you can't work here. It was a really, really hard time, but what I did right, what I have done right, and I've done a lot of wrong in 29 years, but what I've done right always is go to meetings, and I didn't drink no matter what. So I would get out of that van and I'd go to meetings, 12-step meetings, like 4 a day, because I had nowhere else to go. I had nowhere else to go. And it was the only place that had me. I've been, I would walk into where I live. We have an Alano club. I don't know what that is out here, but we have an Alano club. They have meetings all day long, 5 a.m. to midnight, all day long, and they serve food and coffee. And anyway, that's where I would go. And I would walk into those meetings and my life was terrible. And I'd walk out of those meetings and my life was terrible. But the hour that I was in those meetings, my life hurt less. My heart hurt less. And those people in that place were really kind to me. And it had been years since anyone was kind to me. I think one of the hardest things about homelessness is being invisible. People just literally step over you, literally. If they're kind, they just step over you. If they're mean, they say shit along the way, but right? Really, really painful to be invisible. And what I had found in those 12-step rooms is that I was seen. It's really painful to be nobody, right? Like I was nobody. And I just needed somebody to pay attention. I just needed one person to give me a chance, and I knew I could turn it around. Just one person to give me a job, one person to give me a meal, one person to sit, spend time, be kind. I found all of that in those rooms. I got a sponsor, and we started, doing what we do, and my life started to turn around, and eventually I got pretty down into my recovery, and I felt a lot of shame about the homes that I robbed. And I didn't know what to do about it, and I would talk to my sponsor about it, and she would tell me to pray, which now that I'm a sponsor, I know that means I have no effing idea what to tell you, so pray. I can't find that in the book, so just pray about it. Say that all the time to my sponsees. But anyway, so I did, and the answer came in the middle of the night, like all the best answers seem to, that if I wanted to be free of that, I need to do a turnabout face and walk into that which I was most afraid. So I set out and knocked on each of those 22 doors that I robbed and made direct amends to the families that lived there. And that was a turning time in my life. I felt more free, a sense of freedom and empowerment I had never known before. That if I could do that, if I no longer had to be defined by being an addict, like that I was bigger, more than just being an addict. And if I could just walk through that and tell the truth about who I was and have no shame or pride about what I had done, then what is there that I can't do? Like I'm only held down by self-imposed limitation. And I woke up the next morning and I thought to myself, if I were to live the life that I want to live, this is what I want. I want to write a book. I want to educate myself. I want to swim. Oddly, and I want to own a business. I want to start a business that helps families that are suffering from addiction. And I set out to do that. And part of that was calling my mom and saying that we were going to write a book.
Well, we didn't know how to write a book. Neither one of us did. And we had talked about, well, maybe we have a pretty good story that might help people, but we didn't know how to implement that. And so, of course, you know my daughter by now. You see who she is. And so I thought, well, I don't know. How are we going to write this book? I mean, Kristina, our lives are better now. I don't go to Al-Anon all the time. It's like 10 years or something. I don't do that all the time. That's not the focus of my life. And do we really want to dredge up all those terrible experiences and the sadness and the anger and the mistakes? I mean, how many of you parents would want your child to write a book about the biggest mistakes in your life, right? I said, how am I going to show up in this book? That is really a scary proposition. But I also knew that I couldn't stand in her way. I felt like I had amends to make to my child for not standing better and not showing her a better way, not protecting her from anger and all the things that people suffer living with alcoholics. So I said, I guess I'll say, okay, Kristina, because I know she's determined it's going to happen anyway. But then I also said to myself, nothing will come of it anyway. So why not? So then we've got this manuscript, right? And she says, Mom, I want to send it to LA. Oh, LA, okay. Kristina, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't know anybody in LA. Yes, Mom, I know someone in LA. So she sends them in. Once again, I said, well, I can't stop her. You know, that's not fair. I don't want to stand in her way. And so I'll go for that. Go ahead and send it to LA. But of course, you know now that we do have a book. It's published. And it was a terrifying thing to say yes to. But it felt okay when I didn't think nothing would come of it. But now that we have this book, then I'm really terrified, right? I mean, it's so, it's so revealing. I just said, okay, send it off to LA. We have this book. And what we've learned from it is actually we have no power over who reads it. We have no power over what they think of us. We have no power over how it might affect any of you. But I can tell you, it's really liberating. It's very liberating to say the truth and just let it go. And we've learned so many things from this experience. I went to a seminar before the book was actually formed or in the process, but I went to this seminar, and there was an assignment we had, and that was to create a possibility for ourselves. And it was a crowd about this size in this class, but mostly young people compared to me. So they had great ideas what they were going to do, but I couldn't come up with what did I want to live into. The premise is the past is the past. We can't change it, but we don't have to take it with us. We can leave it back there, and we can own the future. We can say, this is what I want to do. I want to live this way in the rest of my life. So I woke up the next morning having to go to this class and talk to all these people and stand there and tell them what my possibility was. I said, oh, I know. I want to be visible. I want to be visible in my life once again. I want to be visible. That means stand for myself. I wanted to stand for my children. I wanted to be present for people such as you. I had no idea it meant standing before you today. That was not in my mind. But what I learned about that is what I can think up here, what I can project, what I can say, what I can feel in my heart, I can do. Anything is possible if we project it, if we live into it, and don't carry all that baggage from the past. I've also learned, that by our word, things happen. So I have this little church. I think the maximum is 100 people, this little chapel by my house. And that's where I go to church. And so on the way, I can walk there. So on the way, I'm going, the book's out, maybe a month, 2 months, something like that. And when I would see people in the grocery store, I'd think, do they know who I am? Oh my God, I better hide. But so on the way to church, I'm thinking, what are these people going to do? Are they going to stone me? Right? Are they going to shun me? Because there's a lot of bad things in this book, and a lot of big mistakes. I don't know. That's what I spent the time in church thinking, and on my way to church thinking. So afterwards, this woman pulls me aside. She says, thank you so much for writing your book. She says, I finished your book. I walked down the hall. I threw my pothead son out of the house. She says, my life has never been better since. So I said, well, I guess it's going to be okay after all. there's one person that got a message from this book, right? I love to show my children that we can make mistakes in our life, really big ones sometimes. We can own them, own those mistakes, and we can be different. Because it's not the adversity that comes our way, but how we manage that diversity that defines us. And I've loved traveling with my daughter. I mean, to see how she's grown and how she's changed and how she's reaching out to others and making a difference in lots of people's lives. And I'd have families come up and say, thank you. You know, your daughter saved my life because she does interventions. And my kid is sober. Oh, and this lady that I was talking to you about, I still see her at church. And her son has a family, and he's sober, and he's living an independent life. Yeah, so that's, you know, that's a gift. But I've heard many people express what Kristina has done for their family, and I'm so proud of it. It's empowering for us, you know, to share this story. So I hope that you hear something today you needed to hear, and I think Kristina's going to close for us, and thank you.
Thank you. So I think that we have time, right, for Q&A, but I did want to say in closing, it's so funny that one person my mom mentioned to send to in LA when I had the manuscript, I don't know where Guy is, but was Chris Shumo in Malibu. He owns Visions Adolescent Center, and he was the only person I knew that knew anything about Hollywood. So I sent it to him, and he kicked the whole thing off. So I always have a warrant. In fact, I think I put him in the acknowledgments as well. But nonetheless, so what I have learned through this process is I just wanted to say I've learned, I think the most important, I don't know, many things, but I've learned that my mom is one of the bravest women that I know. And she is the hero to countless people. I mean, we go, like when our book came out, we would go to book signings. This embarrasses her, but I don't care. We would go to book signings, and people stand in her line for like 45 minutes to shake her hand, and I would just sit there and I would watch these parents, you know, with tears leaping from their eyes about how her words in the book encourage them to take care of themselves and their families. And I know this because no one's in my line, right? Everyone's angry at the addict, but they'll stand in my mama's line for a long time. So this is why I know. So I've learned that my mom is the hero of my story. It has been the joy of a lifetime, really. One of the greatest parts of my life has been traveling with my mom and coming to events like this. And I think I would also like to say for certain in closing that anything is possible, right? That's the other thing that I've learned. I set out to accomplish that list, and I did. I went back to swimming. I'm an all-American athlete. I did open that business, right? Like I'm a proud female, sober business owner of facilities and intervention company, and you know, I travel the whole world helping families and addicts, and it's amazing. And I did write that book, and I went on to, you know, get married and have children. So, you know, it's like I stand before you, a woman that's so, like, I'm many things. I'm a wife and a mother, a daughter, a sister, a really proud sister and daughter. You know, I am a business owner. I'm an all-American athlete and an all-American drug addict with almost 29 years clean and sober. So thank you so much for having us here, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have as well.
Thank you, everybody.